Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we'll be looking into who the Bye-Bye Man is. One of the most mysterious, terrifying, and complex characters in the world of horror cinema is, without a doubt, the Bye-Bye Man. This enigmatic being has captured the imagination of many, challenging the boundaries between reality and fiction. Originating from an urban legend that has transcended generations, the Bye-Bye Man has been adapted into various forms of media, including films and comics, each offering a unique perspective on his origin and nature. It is because of the fascinating and complex nature of this character that, in this video, we will explore his origin, personality, behavior, and the different known abilities. To do this, I'll give a detailed summary of the plot, as well as the origin of his legend. To understand his story, we must go beyond the 2017 film, The Bye-Bye Man, and explore the literary roots in the story The Bridge to Body Island by Robert Damon Schneck. In this story, set in the early 20th century, we learn about the dark origins of this character. According to the tale, the Bye-Bye Man was a young albino born in Louisiana. From a young age, he was rejected by his community due to his appearance. Extremely pale skin and unusually light eyes. But what truly set him apart from others was his peculiar behavior and obsession with words and thoughts. As he grew older, this young man began to develop a disturbing belief that thoughts and words have the power to shape reality. Isolated and marginalized, his obsession intensified when he escaped from a psychiatric hospital where he had been committed. From there, he began to wander the roads of the southern United States, collecting fragments of corpses to create his monstrous companion, a dog named Gloomsinger, a grotesque creature made of human flesh and bones. The Bye-Bye Man was not just a wanderer. He had become a force that preyed on anyone who remembered him. If someone mentioned him, thought about him, or tried to understand his existence, he would pursue them, feeding off their fear and paranoia. His name, like a curse, passed from person to person, leaving a trail of tragedies in its wake. This chilling concept was the foundation for the 2017 film The Bye-Bye Man, where the idea of the character as a presence that infects minds takes center stage. Although the film changes certain aspects of his story, it retains the core essence: the danger of thinking about him or speaking his name. The legend of the Bye-Bye Man was popularized by author Robert Damon Schneck in his book The President's Vampire, where he recounts encounters with this supernatural being. Later, the story was adapted into the horror film The Bye-Bye Man, 2017, directed by Stacy Title, which explores how this malevolent entity feeds on the thoughts and words of its victims, leading them to commit horrible acts. However, the most interesting aspect is that the Bye-Bye Man is not limited to the film or the original story. The idea of an entity living in our minds has been explored in other media. Although there are no official comics, the idea this being presents, of not saying its name, has been structured in different narratives, both in horror cinema and comics unrelated to his story. His concept reminds us of figures like Candyman or Slenderman, characters who also play with the idea that terror can spread like a virus, in this case, through the human mind. The story of the Bye-Bye Man is further developed with a young college student named Elliot who has dreams and goals and decides to take that big step we've all dreamed of at some point: becoming independent. He is not alone. His girlfriend Sasha accompanies him, someone with whom he shares not only love, but also that special connection of growing together, and his best friend John, the person who is always there to remind him that life is lighter when you walk it with good friendship. The three of them find a house that's somewhat old, somewhat rundown, but perfect. It's the kind of place that doesn't scream home, but invites you to imagine the future you can build there. A space where you can laugh out loud, spend nights talking about impossible dreams, and yes, face the silence. That silence that, sometimes, can also be unsettling. They settle in with all the excitement in the world, because we've all gone through that moment when we believe we're starting something unique, something that's ours. And although the house wasn't perfect, it had something. It had history. But this is where I want us to reflect together. How many times do we enter a place without asking ourselves what stories it holds? Because every space, every corner, carries with it an energy, a weight. We don't see it, but it's there waiting. Everything was fine at first. They felt free, excited. But as it often happens in life, curiosity started to open doors. Elliot, being the most curious of the group, found something strange in the house. In a corner of the bedroom, there was an old piece of furniture, like those that no longer get made, full of marks. Marks on the wood, as if someone had desperately tried to escape from there. That should have felt like a warning, don't you think? But Elliot didn't see it that way. He just felt a need to explore. He opens a drawer, and inside he finds something, a piece of paper. At first, it didn't seem special, but there was something written that he couldn't ignore. Don't think it. Don't say it. Now, I want you to pause for a moment with me here. Think about those words. Don't think it. Don't say it. What would you feel if you came across something like that? Because those words carry enormous weight. It's as if they were saying, there's something you shouldn't touch, but at the same time, you've already touched it with your mind. It's a paradox. The more you try not to think about something, the more you think about it. Has that ever happened to you? But Elliot, like many of us, couldn't ignore it. Something inside him said, I need to know more. And that's where he comes across the name that will change everything. The Bye-Bye Man. A name that shouldn't have been said, but once released, cannot be erased. Because there are things that, once they enter your mind, don't just stay there. They start to grow, take shape, and feed on your thoughts. And here, I want us to reflect together. How many times have we allowed something negative to enter our minds? Maybe it wasn't a monster like the Bye-Bye Man, but they were thoughts. Doubts, fears, insecurities. Things that start small, but if we let them grow, they end up controlling us. That's what happened to Elliot. In his quest to understand, without realizing it, he had released something that wouldn't just affect him, but everyone around him. When Elliot says the name the Bye-Bye Man, something changes. And I'm not talking about a change you can notice right away. It's something more subtle, quieter, but much more terrifying. Because have you noticed that the worst fears aren't the ones that scream, but the ones that whisper? The ones that slowly creep into your mind until you can no longer distinguish what's real from what isn't. At first, it seemed like everything was the same, but it wasn't. Elliot, Sasha, and John begin to experience strange things. They're not big things, but they are unsettling. Noises at night, a feeling that they're not alone. Shadows that seem to move out of the corner of your eye. And this is where I want to stop. Because many times, the first sign that something is wrong isn't something obvious, but that intuition we all have inside. That little voice that tells us something here isn't right, but like we often do in life, they try to ignore it. They try to move on, thinking that maybe it's all in their heads. However, what the Bye-Bye Man does isn't just appear as a physical monster. It's much more terrifying than that. He enters your mind, your deepest thoughts, and begins to manipulate what you see, what you feel. Elliot starts to distrust others. And of course, it makes sense because when someone plays with your mind, the first place they attack is your relationships. Sasha begins to get sick, to feel weak, as if something is draining her energy. John, on the other hand, starts having visions, seeing things that aren't there. And Elliot, well, he starts losing himself in his own thoughts. And here, I want us to reflect together. How many times have negative thoughts made us distrust the people we love the most? The Bye-Bye Man isn't just a movie villain, he's a metaphor for our insecurities. Because when we allow those doubts to grow, they separate us from others. They isolate us. They make us see enemies where there are none. The situation worsens when Elliot starts to investigate. He wants to understand what's happening, who or what the Bye-Bye Man is. He discovers that this entity has been around for a long time, causing tragedies wherever it goes. And it's always the same. Someone discovers its name, and chaos begins. People start distrusting one another, hurting each other, and in the end, the bye-bye man always wins. Because he doesn't need to attack physically, he just needs to plant a seed in your mind. As Elliot seeks answers, he starts to realize something terrible. The more you think about the bye-bye man, the stronger he becomes. And here, I want us to take a pause, because this is so real in our daily lives. Think of a fear you've had. Maybe it was small at first, something insignificant. But the more you thought about it, the bigger it grew, right? It's as if our attention feeds it, as if we give it power just by focusing on it. Elliot also discovers that there's no easy solution. The only way to stop the bye-bye man is to break the chain. Not saying his name, not letting others know about him. But there's a problem. How do you do that when you're already trapped? Because once you think about him, it's almost impossible to stop thinking about him. Meanwhile, the relationship between the three friends begins to crumble. Sasha starts suspecting that John is hiding something. John begins to fear that Elliot is going crazy. And Elliot, well, he starts to feel completely alone. Because that's what the bye-bye man does. He isolates you, takes away the support of the people you love until it's just you and your fears. But the most terrifying thing of all isn't the visions or the noises or the shadows. It's that idea that you can no longer trust your own mind. Can you imagine what it would be like to live like that? Not knowing if what you're seeing is real or if it's just an illusion. Not knowing if the person in front of you is your friend or someone who wants to harm you. Desperate, Elliot tries to warn others. But here's the paradox. By trying to save them by talking about the bye-bye man, he's only spreading his power. And I want us to think about this for a moment. Sometimes in our lives, by trying to protect others, we end up sharing with them our own fears and insecurities. Because without realizing it, those fears can be contagious. The bye-bye man isn't just a monster. He's a reminder that what we allow into our minds has the power to change us, to separate us from the people we love the most, and ultimately, to control us. And Elliot is about to learn this lesson the hard way. Elliot, now completely consumed by the hallucinations of the bye-bye man, finds himself at the climax of his internal battle. The visions attack him, distort him, drag him into a spiral of despair so intense that he begins to see his best friend, John, brutally attacking his girlfriend, Sasha. The anguish pushes him to the limit, and in a fit of panic, armed to the teeth, he doesn't hesitate for a second to shoot, thinking he's saving the person he loves most in the world. But the twist is heartbreaking, friends. What he saw as a threat was nothing more than an illusion created by the evil of the bye-bye man. His shot doesn't hit his friend, but Sasha, who falls before him, fatally wounded. Elliot is trapped in a prison of guilt, but he still doesn't understand the magnitude of the evil surrounding him. When he realizes that the curse of the bye-bye man could reach his brother Virgil and his niece Alice, he decides to take an even more tragic step. In a desperate attempt to stop the darkness consuming him, he makes a fatal decision. He takes his own life, believing that in doing so, he could cut the evil at its root. But his sacrifice doesn't bring the peace he expected. Instead, it opens the door to an even deeper darkness. And here comes the real twist. When Virgil and Alice return to the house, Alice notices something strange. Coins in unusual places, and an inscription she cannot read. This means the curse is still alive, that the bye-bye man is still lurking, and the cycle of terror continues. But wait, because there's more. Detective Shaw arrives at the scene to investigate, and what she finds is even more terrifying. John, who is thought to be dead, is alive, but his final whisper, mentioning the name of the bye-bye man, passes the curse to the detective, and in this way, the cycle begins again, making it clear that the bye-bye man continues to seek new victims, and his terror will never end. And now that we've thoroughly covered his story, I want to talk to you about the physical appearance of the Bye-Bye Man, what we know about his personality and behavior, and I will explain his incredible abilities and known weaknesses. This being is one of those villains whose mere presence can freeze your blood. The Bye-Bye Man has a physical form that, in many ways, is a visual representation of the human mind distorted by fear. His face is one of the most disturbing features because it is neither fully human nor completely monstrous. His skin, a pale and sickly tone, seems lifeless, as if it were made of wax or some almost ghostly substance. The worst part is that his skin appears to be devoid of any expression, which gives him a supernatural quality. He is there, but at the same time he seems not to be at all like a shadow. The lack of eyes is one of the creepiest details. Instead of human eyes, he has two dark, empty sockets, as if all the evil in the world had been absorbed into those holes. This absence of eyes is a constant reminder that what you're looking at is not real, that it is outside of human logic. The feeling that he is watching you, but without seeing, creates an unbearable psychological pressure, because the figure seems to be lurking in every corner, but you never fully see it. The Bye-Bye Man's mouth is another feature that sets him apart. Instead of a normal human mouth, he has a huge opening, as if his face were torn or distorted by some indescribable force. This slit gives him a more grotesque appearance, as it feels as if he is capable of devouring the soul of anyone who dares to look at him directly. He has no teeth, but the mouth seems capable of emitting a demonic whisper, as if it were transmitting evil directly to your mind, inviting you to fall into its mental trap. As for his body, the Bye-Bye Man has no defined figure. He is not muscular, nor does he have the human proportions one might expect from a tangible creature. His form is more like a silhouette that moves between shadows, with a hunched posture and a movement that seems to flow rather than walk. His clothing is dark, almost like morning attire or worn-out clothes, which makes him appear even more inhuman. There is nothing attractive about his appearance, only a reminder that he is beyond the reach of what we consider real. The most terrifying part is the way he moves. He does not have a solid physical presence like other monsters. The Bye-Bye Man can appear and disappear at will, as if he is filtering into the physical plane only when he is most needed. He is like a ghost that glides silently, which only amplifies the psychological terror he induces. His movements are slow, calculated, as if he enjoys the process of stalking his victims, watching them without haste, knowing that fear builds slowly. This being does not only play with perception, but also feeds on the deepest emotions, such as fear and confusion. Every time he appears, the sense of unreality increases. People begin to doubt what they see, to wonder if they are losing their sanity, and that is exactly the Bye-Bye Man's goal, to make his victim question everything they perceive, to the point where they no longer know if they are dreaming or trapped in an endless nightmare. Therefore, the appearance of the Bye-Bye Man is not just physical. It is also a manifestation of the mental manipulation he exerts over his victims. He is not just a monster with a strange face or a ghostly figure. He is a representation of what happens when the darkest fears and most disturbing thoughts begin to take control of a person's mind. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to have a nightmare so vivid, so persistent, that the boundaries between what is real and what is imagined completely blur? That is what the Bye-Bye Man represents in his physical form. Fear personified, purest horror, where what you see is not always what it is, and paranoia becomes your worst enemy. The Bye-Bye Man is one of those antagonists who cannot simply be defined as a physical monster. His true terror lies in his psychology, in his ability to manipulate and control the minds of those who enter his sphere of influence. His personality and behavior are deeply tied to his nature as an evil entity, feeding off the fears and insecurities of his victims, but also playing with their emotions and darkest thoughts. The Bye-Bye Man's personality is built on a fundamental concept: control. He is not an impulsive or vengeful being in the traditional sense. He does not act out of rage or a desire to destroy for pleasure. What makes him truly terrifying is his unsettling calmness and infinite patience. He is not in a hurry. He does not need to kill immediately or cause direct destruction. His true power lies in mental manipulation. He infiltrates his victims' minds slowly, almost imperceptibly, in a way that defies logic. He is a master of the mind, and his goal is not simply to kill, but to drag the victim into despair. He feeds on paranoia, confusion, and the inability of people to trust what they see or feel. With every disturbing thought he plants, with every fear he amplifies, the Bye-Bye Man tightens his control. What sets him apart from other monsters or villains is that he does not need to physically present himself to harm someone. His mere name is enough to unleash chaos because, by mentioning it, the human mind begins to create a direct connection with him. He is like a parasite living inside people, manipulating their thoughts and making reality itself distort. The Bye-Bye Man's behavior reflects his insidious nature. He is not a being that acts directly in the physical world. Instead, he moves in the shadows, controlling what people believe to be real. His goal is to sow doubt, fear, and confusion. Through hallucinations and reality distortions, he causes his victims to lose control over their own perceptions. His main tactic is to sow fear, first through thoughts, and then by manipulating his victims' emotions. When he makes contact with someone, the first thing he does is ensure that person begins to hear his name, repeating it in their thoughts. By doing this, the name Bye-Bye Man becomes a trigger that activates the curse, creating a mental connection that allows the terror to spread. He is like a parasite that doesn't physically possess its host, but consumes their mind little by little. People begin to hear voices, see things that aren't there, and doubt themselves and what they perceive. This paranoia is his most powerful tool. On a physical level, his behavior is mostly passive. There are no big confrontations, no open battles. What he does is wait, lurk, and observe his victim until their psyche is completely broken. Like a shadow, the Bye-Bye Man is not often seen, but when he is, he does so in a calculated manner, choosing the exact moment when the victim is on the edge of madness. The atmosphere becomes dense with his presence, and everything around him distorts. Objects seem to move on their own. People begin to see each other as threats, and what was once a normal life turns into an endless nightmare. What truly sets the Bye-Bye Man apart from other villains is his relationship with his victims. He is not just a destroyer. He is a seducer. He enters his victims' minds quietly, gently, and when people begin to doubt their own reality, the Bye-Bye Man is there, like a dark friend, whispering in their ear and making them feel that what they are experiencing is the only real thing. He makes paranoia grow, causing the victims to distance themselves from their loved ones. This emotional manipulation makes him an even more terrifying figure, because he becomes a representation of the most vulnerable part of the human psyche, the despair and fear of losing control. The behavior of the Bye-Bye Man culminates when he has completely disturbed the victim's mind. In his final state, fear becomes so overwhelming that, often, the victim feels compelled to act irrationally, doing something desperate, whether it's committing suicide, killing someone they love, or even passing the cycle of terror to others, as happens with the mention of his name. The cycle of terror never ends, and the behavior of the Bye-Bye Man is the driving force that keeps it going, ensuring the curse never fades. Throughout the movie and the stories associated with his myth, several aspects of his power are revealed, making him an unbreakable threat, though not invulnerable. Let's analyze each of his abilities and known weaknesses to have a complete picture of this evil being. One of the Bye-Bye Man's most powerful abilities is his capacity to distort the reality of his victims. He does not need to be physically present to cause harm. His main weapon is mental manipulation. Once someone mentions his name or thinks of him, He begins to infiltrate that person's mind, creating hallucinations and distortions of reality. This can make them see things that aren't there or perceive threats where none exist. People begin to doubt what is real and what isn't, causing great psychological and emotional distress. The bye-bye man doesn't just alter what a person sees or hears. He also plays with their deepest thoughts and emotions. He can sow fear, confusion, and paranoia so effectively that even those who are aware of the hallucinations begin to go insane. This control over the human psyche is what makes him an extremely dangerous adversary, because in the end, his victims are unable to trust their own senses. As a supernatural entity, the bye-bye man cannot be harmed by conventional means. His form doesn't seem solid or material, which makes him invulnerable to physical attacks. This means that weapons, blows, or any form of physical aggression are ineffective against him. His true nature seems to transcend the physical realm, allowing him to maintain his power consistently, regardless of external circumstances. A key aspect of the bye-bye man is how his curse spreads. By mentioning his name or thinking about him, a person becomes his victim. This mental contagion does not only affect the person directly involved, but it can extend to those nearby. For example, by saying his name out loud, the evil is passed on to the person who hears it. This is a mechanism that allows the cycle of terror to continue endlessly, as each new victim can spread the evil even further. Although he is not physically present all the time, the bye-bye man has the ability to alter his surroundings, making them more sinister or dangerous. He can generate out-of-place objects, like the coins found in strange places, and create a tense and distressing atmosphere that accompanies the hallucinations. These alterations in the environment help reinforce the sense of paranoia and distrust, making the victims feel trapped in a constant nightmare. The coins in the bye-bye man are not explicitly presented as a direct weakness of the evil entity, but they could be interpreted symbolically as a possible weak point. While their main function in the movie is to serve as symbols of the curse's spread, in a deeper analysis, they could represent a way to interrupt or break the cycle of terror the bye-bye man generates, suggesting that his presence could be manipulated or even eliminated through these objects. In many cultures, coins have a symbolic connotation of exchange or payment, and in this context, the coins could represent the tribute paid for being under the control of the bye-bye man. This payment is not only physical, but also emotional and psychological, as the victims suffer the hallucinations and distortions of reality that the entity imposes on them. If the coins are indeed symbols of this debt, removing them could, in theory, annul that debt, and thus interrupt the spread of the evil. Additionally, the coins could serve as a tangible link to the physical world, a connection between reality and the supernatural curse. While the entity itself cannot be touched or destroyed in a conventional manner, the coins could be the only physical object that the bye-bye man leaves behind. In this sense, destroying or manipulating the coins could offer a way to break the link that connects the bye-bye man to the victims and to the real world, acting as a kind of key to undo the curse. While the bye-bye man is skilled at manipulating the minds of his victims, those who are able to recognize what is happening, become aware of the cycle of terror, and confront their own feelings of fear and confusion have a slight advantage over him. In a sense, his power depends on the mental and emotional vulnerability of those who face him, and if someone is able to maintain their mental strength, they can delay his influence. Ultimately, the message of the bye-bye man is clear. Fear is a silent enemy that feeds on our thoughts and our darkest emotions. Although the characters try to fight against him, the evil was already within them the moment they thought of him. Elliot, Sasha, and John are victims not only of a supernatural entity, but also of how their own fears and paranoias take control of their minds. And well, this would be all we know so far about the mysterious entity known as the bye-bye man. Honestly, I didn't think the character would be so interesting the first time I saw the movie, but in the end, when I saw everything he did and how he manipulated everyone who heard or saw his name, I thought he could easily be an entity from the Lovecraftian universe. I can't imagine the fear and anxiety he must cause in his victims. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you already know about the Bye-Bye Man? Do you think he's some sort of demon, a Lovecraftian entity, or could he just be some kind of curse? And finally, if something similar happened to you, would you be able to resist his influence? Share your answers to these questions and your general opinion on the Bye-Bye Man. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, share it to support the channel, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos.